Really appreciate that intro. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today for what we feel is an important topic here at Columbus. Technology impacts every part of an enterprise, and concepts like digital transformation continue to emphasize the importance of IT planning and strategy as a critical contributor to the success of your business. Yet according to recent Capgemini survey, only about a third, 38% actually, of executives are actively incorporating IT into their strategic planning. IT has been essential to business for a long time, but it's less and less possible for businesses to continue to grow and change effectively without aligning and integrating their IT strategy into their business planning. So that's what we hope to accomplish today, is give you an idea of first why it's important, what's changing, where the risks are, and then we'll even go further into talking about exactly what you can do to plan your IT strategy and make sure that it's aligned with your business strategy. So looking at the agenda next here, we're going to talk about why you want to align your strategy, one of our key goals here. This is going to start by looking at common concerns and understanding the risk of those. It's going to be we're going to review what the traditional view is of IT in business planning, how we've looked at it historically, and then we're going to talk about a new perspective for looking at IT and integrating it into your plans. Finally, we'll talk about how you would plan your IT strategy. And that's going to be really some of the core meat of what we're looking at in this presentation. And we'll end with some nice reminders of what you should be considering and things that you want to be thinking about as you do your IT planning. So as we go along here, I am going to open it up for people to ask questions. We will pause periodically through the presentation and answer some of those questions if we can for the topics that we're reviewing. We'll also do questions at the end of the session. So if you want to save it up till then, that's also quite fine. But here's a quick note on how to use the GoToWebinar tool to get those questions in there. And again, we'll answer those as we go through things today. So why do you want to align your IT strategy to your business plans? We're going to start by looking at what's the focus for business leaders right now. This is based on a sampling of several executive surveys. We've identified kind of a top 5 layers of concern or areas of concern for business leaders, in 2019 here. And we want to go through them, talk about where it impacts and how IT really factors into these things. So this starts in no particular order with the focus of compliance. So there are a large number of compliance mandates out there. We've been familiar with SOX for a long time. PCI is not new, HIPAA, but there are a couple of new ones that are driving IT spend and are a focus for businesses to make sure that they are not running any increased risk by not meeting those compliance mandates. So GDPR, you probably have heard of. This is from the European Union, and that's the General Data Protection Regulation. This is all about protecting personal information. And if you're doing business in Europe or with European companies, this is going to impact you. And I think there are a large number of US companies that have to deal with that. Kind of similar to that is that CSPA, that's the California Consumer Privacy Act. And that is, is kind of along the same lines of the GDPR. So your people, companies that control personal data are required by these compliance requirements to put in place appropriate technical and organizational measures to implement these data protection principles. So at its heart, this is boiling down to how you're protecting your data, what systems your data are running on, and it becomes a key part of your IT planning as we go forward. Next item here is data management. Data, big data, advanced analytics, predictive analytics, these are all becoming core to business. You probably heard the glib phrase, data is the new oil. It's important to companies for their direct business and to understand how they're relating to the larger economy around them. So this is being used for budgeting, forecasting, and planning. And the key element here is that, again, these systems are running on your technology. The way you handle them and manage them depends upon the technology that you have deployed. And so, again, it's a key factor in IT strategy. Next concept has kind of become a buzzword here, and you've probably heard it. Certainly, we talk about it at Columbus, and that's digital transformation. So digital transformation is the use of new, fast-changing digital technology to solve problems. Oftentimes, this uses cloud solutions to reduce reliance on user-owned hardware. Oftentimes, you'll see this as software as a service or other subscription-based services. A common example of that is going to be Microsoft's Office 365. The traditional model, we would go out and buy our Office subscriptions, deploy them to our workstations, and upgrade when needed, right? When we felt we needed the latest version. With the subscription based Office 365, it is constantly on the latest version. And you see that productivity and you gain the benefits of that evolving, developing product as you go forward. It's inherent in the subscription model. Digital transformation is something that your CEOs and CIOs are focusing on a lot, and oftentimes there's mandates from your board, from other business leadership to make sure that you're working that into your business planning. Growth is something every business is looking for, and you do need to make sure that your IT strategy is both driving growth and supporting it effectively. So you can't grow and add companies through organic or merger and acquisition without being able to accommodate and add, handle those companies with your existing resources. So you need to plan for that with your technology planning as much as you do with your business planning. Finally, information security. This is at the end here, for a reason I'll go into next. My next couple slides highlight some of these concerns around security, but it's oftentimes the number one subject. People are concerned about data breaches and different types of ransomware attacks, spear phishing. You've probably heard of all of these, but it's a key area, and some of the reasons that it's a key area is because it's in the news all the time. This week we learned about Capital One, over 100 million people affected by this data breach. It's a big deal, and it's happening constantly. City of Baltimore had a ransomware attack that shut them down, all except for essential services going forward. Equifax also in the news recently. They recently had a settlement that they related to their data breach in 2017. The data breach itself cost over $4 billion, and that's not even factoring in the recent settlement. Other large companies you see here, Marriott, 500 million records breached, Medicare, and then Yahoo. This is the granddaddy. This was a hack that started back in 2013, wasn't revealed until recently in the last year or so, but 3 billion accounts hacked, and it still stands as the most significant attack in history. So we highlight these to, again, emphasize security as a strong focus when you're doing your IT planning. And we want to flesh this out. So this isn't just large enterprises that are being affected by this. This is businesses at all levels. So your small businesses are experiencing similar risk, right, without necessarily all the same resources that the large enterprises have. So, the majority of attacks actually target SMBs. They don't have the money to spend on cybersecurity that large enterprises have, and so it doesn't allow them to necessarily create, and protect themselves in the same way. And you know, a lot of smaller businesses go out of business when this happens. So again, this concern covers the full range of companies. If you're a large enterprise, if you're mid-sized, if you're small business, it's something that you're concerned about. So our next step, we want to go into our understanding, our traditional understanding of IT. You know, we're looking at you know, IT and how we've interacted with it in the past, and the perception really of IT as we've been working with it historically. So one of the biggest things that most companies do or have done in the past is they treat IT as a cost center. You know, they look at it as a drag on resources. You know, it's like a car; it loses value the minute you drive it off the lot. You know, here they come; they're asking for large capital expenditures, and we're not sure that we fully understand what the value of it is. It's just needed. You know, we can't operate without it, so we feel like it's something we have to do rather than something that we want to or should do. Budgets under this traditional model, they grow, they balloon, because we're always chasing that latest, you know, that latest tech, right? So the companies or the IT comes to leadership and says, you know, we need to do this. This, you know, is better than what we're doing now, and they throw a lot of money at it, right? So it's treating it as a cost center is kind of a backward-looking focus, and doesn't allow you to really look at IT strategy and apply it to what you're doing. The other part here, we're looking at an operational focus. So, you know, traditionally, if you were not, you know, if there wasn't a major issue and, you know, the water was running and the lights were on, you know, you're happy that IT is doing its job. You know, it's not creating issues for you, but that's a very operational focus, right? So you can't be strategic when all you're doing is looking at, you know, keeping those lights on. So, you know, we're going to talk about shifting that focus and, you know, having IT be that strategic partner. And I want to give the caveat here that, you know, the operational focus is still important for us as we go forward here. You know, if you can't, you know, if your users can't use email, if your email is not functioning, your leadership is not going to talk to you about strategy. So it's important to have it still in there, but you know, again, it's kind of a non-strategic approach to IT. Finally, people have historically seen IT as obstacles to the business. You know, I want to do something and I can't do it because IT is telling me no, or we don't have the resources. We haven't planned to accommodate a need or a requirement that we have as we move forward. And you know, and IT is really takes the brunt of that blame. You know, they're not, you know, by not planning, they don't have the ability to help you do what you need to do. We're going to pause here real quick. I want to ask if anybody has any questions that have come up so far. Caitlin?
Hi, Kevin. There are no questions at this time.
Great. So what we're going to talk about next is a new perspective on IT. You know, we want to look at IT as a driver of value through aligning IT and business planning. So that, you know, when you look at it, it actually ends up being fairly simple to understand why you want to do this alignment and what makes sense about it. So if you want to take your IT strategy and your planning and you want to align it with your business objectives. So everybody knows you've got your business plan, you have your goals and your objectives and what you're trying to achieve as a company. Everything that is done in IT needs to support that. And not only do they need to support that, they should actually be looked at as an area of value creation. So if you have an initiative with your you know, at your executive level to make an improvement in the company, to go after a new market, to develop a new product, all of those things need to be incorporated into your IT strategy and make sure that your IT is supporting that. So this is something that originates cooperatively between the CEO and your trusted advisor. Oftentimes that trusted advisor is your CIO, sometimes CTO, but sometimes it's a key strategic partner that you work with. So this is somebody who comes in and consults with you and offers guidance based on their expertise as a technology provider to you to help with this planning. Sometimes it's even multiple partners, depending. So this alignment will transform IT into a driver of value within your organization. So you need those IT costs tied to measurable results. You know, a common example here that's good to bring up for this new perspective is you can look at a company like Home Depot. So they're the world's largest home improvement retailer, and they have a proven model for success. So they offer a huge selection of in-stock discount merchandise, and they keep knowledgeable and friendly staff on the floor at all times. This is founded on rapid inventory replenishment, low operating costs, and outstanding customer service. So as they were looking at what they could do from a technological perspective, to support their business goals. So their business objectives are outstanding customer service, you know, people on the floor at all the times, and rapid inventory replenishment. They made a strategy to get handheld computers in the hands of their staff on the floor to better monitor inventory levels and to improve their customer service. So again, you can see a very simple but clear example of here's what we do best, and here's how IT is going to support that. And then the common results of a business IT alignment, you do see lower predictable costs for IT. You see improved performance with less downtime, which contributes to productivity for your employees. And then you reduce your cybersecurity or your cyber attack risk. Security moves beyond IT and actually becomes responsibility for the entire enterprise because you have that IT strategy planning incorporated into your business plan. Okay, we're going to talk next about planning your IT strategy. And this is going to be what you need to know to align your IT with your business strategy. I think I'll pause real quick again here for questions since this is a good transition point.
We actually did have a question come in. The question is, IT costs to measurable results seems easy for initiatives and projects, but are you advocating the same thing for operational expenses? And what would that look like?
Okay, can you repeat that again? I want to make sure I have it clear.
Yeah. IT costs to measurable results seems easy for initiatives and projects, but are you advocating the same thing for operational expenses?
Okay, good question. So yes, for planning and strategy, it definitely needs to be tied and measurable, like you said. Operating expenses, you know, I think that is often going to be a choice for you know, for how you're budgeting, for how you're planning. But you know, it's still, you know, even though operational expenses are necessary, there still should be a measurable way for confirming that it's adding value to the company, right? So you know, the historic model, I think every aspect of what you're looking at does need to incorporate that and accommodate value being created for the company. It may be hard to understand that. You know, we do look at operational expenses as, you know, as like a utility type function, but you know, I think that's a good question. Anything else, Caitlin?
Not at this moment.
Okay. So next we're going to talk about the how you want to actually get these things done and accomplish these goals. So when you're aligning with business objectives, you want to start with the value proposition for your company. You know, what do we do well? What sets us apart? What makes us unique as a company? So we have an example here of a company that we worked with in the aerospace industry, and they have as a value statement, they provide supply chain management and integration services to the aerospace and defense industry. Along with specialized hardware, oversized fasteners, make-to-print items, and structural assemblies. They provide on-site inventory bin management, distribution, full service kitting, and complete logistical support. So that's a nice, clear value proposition. Here's what we do. Here's what we do well. Here's what our company is really about. So they have companies that they're working with in defense, like Lockheed Martin. They're working with Boeing, Northrop Grumman. So these are all companies where they have need to meet DoD requirements, and there's a large concern about information security, about making sure that they're complying with the regulations that they got to meet. As we look at this, we start with that value proposition. We go on and ask questions like, what is most important to the success of the business? In this case, compliance, right? They need to comply with those security mandates. Supply chain management also fairly important to this. We can also ask questions as you're planning, what produces the most revenue for your company? Obviously, that's again going to elevate the importance of this, and you want to focus your IT strategy around these things that are important to the success and generate the most revenue. For this company, it was their bin management and their kitting, so supply chain management and kitting solutions. And then you need to look around at what IT assets too that you have associated with these things. So that's going to be your area of focus. In this situation with this client, what they had was security compliance requirements that they had to meet in order to continue doing business with these companies. What we did for them is we went out and helped them, one, understand the requirements that were being asked of them, and help them build up their security footprint to meet those needs in order to continue doing business. So this company looked around and said, from a technology standpoint, what do we need to do to make sure that our business is continuing to do these things that are most successful for us? With security being the focus, we help them ensure that they were at less risk. We helped them ensure that they had the tools in place to defend them from identified risks by their vendors. And then we made sure that they could report on this too to their vendors and continue to do business with them. So again, they took their IT strategy. They weren't as focused on certain systems, and we brought it into a security focus that kept things moving forward for them. So the next major step of aligning your IT strategy is to understand your resources. So this starts with your team. Who do you have on your team? Who are you working with as technology partners? So we look at these and we determine where their strengths are. We look at our capabilities and we look at our weaknesses. So we can't deliver things where we don't have the resources, capabilities, and training to deliver it. So you may need to, in your strategic planning, plan for that strategy and plan to improve that. You may also look at different partners, adding partners, looking at what else your partner can offer, and incorporating that again into your strategy. And this is a key point. The last point here that I want to make is you want to assess your network, your infrastructure, and your key line of business applications. So starting at the as a starting point, knowing where you are, knowing the capabilities of these systems that you have in place, and being able to leverage that technology really to accomplish your goals gives you a baseline for understanding and and beginning that alignment process. Okay, so your next step is going to be to create a plan. And as we look at this, you want to look at least a 2 to 3 year plan. The reason for this is that a one-year plan is often too focused on short-term goals. You do need to be able to see the big picture. Oftentimes businesses will look at a 5-year plan. 5 years in technology is you can do it. It's not going to harm your plan, but typically technology is growing and changing, and it's 5 years can sometimes be too long. Your plan might not be relevant at the conclusion. You also want to develop clear goals, and you want mileposts along the way. So with any strategy and planning, obviously you need to set goals. Clearly defined goals are always most useful, but mileposts along the way. This can be a long-range change, and you're not necessarily going to, see a lot of the results until you get to the end. So creating metrics to measure the change over time, tying those to your business outcomes, making sure that you're helping, gives you the ability to keep momentum and keep people engaged with the process. So your overall organization is going to be trying to meet these short-term goals and meet these key performance indicators as they are looking at the long-term goal. And then you want to report on those. Again, you want to have people knowing the status of things. You want to know that they're moving forward. You want to see the progress. That helps engagement at all levels, from the executive through the rest of the organization. Finally, you want to make calculated choices about what you're doing. So we all know that in an ideal world, we could throw a lot of money at IT and we could solve all our problems. Very few companies have the budget to do that. So you don't have unlimited money, you don't have unlimited resources. So you need to be very thoughtful and strategic about where you're putting your energy and what you're focusing on. You want to start by knowing your budget. You need to identify what's actually under your control. And then you need to consider value versus cost. There are a lot of smaller changes that can be made that will have large improvements over time. So when you look at strategic planning for IT, looking at all the big projects can sometimes be overwhelming. But if you take the time to analyze these, look at what the value is of versus the cost, and make sure that the things you're focusing on are not only supporting the business, but also providing the greatest value. You're going to be much more successful in your IT planning. And so again, typically you can't solve the IT issues at once. You're going to need to take it in steps, and oftentimes take it in smaller chunks. And sometimes those are hard choices. So a key point when you're developing your IT strategy is that you absolutely have to have buy-in from your top executives. A lot of this focus is being put onto the CEO. It's no longer something that they can just leave in the hands of their CIO or their IT director. They need to embrace this and sign off on the strategy. This helps grow support throughout the company, which is going to help ensure your success, right? So if the CEO is driving this, if they're aware of this, if they're communicating this at all levels of the company, it's going to ensure that you keep your business plans in alignment with your IT strategy, and that's really going to help the success of your project. So if they're not involved, it's a lot harder to succeed. And then a last point I want to make here is an IT strategy needs to be flexible. So it's kind of a cliche that technology is always changing and evolving, but it's also true, right? So, and it's more rapid than ever. You need to adapt to both changes in your business. You need to respond to disruptive technologies. If someone is coming in and changing how your industry has done business, since the beginning of time. Your technology is going to help you respond to it, and having a solid plan in place will allow you to flex and adapt to that. So, key point here that I like to make is that IT strategy, it's a process. It's not a point in time event, and it's an ongoing process. So I'll pause here again for questions. This is a good stopping point. Caitlin, anything?
Yeah, we did have a question come in. What are some challenges to aligning IT with business strategy?
Yeah, good question. So one of the biggest challenges is if you're in, say, a siloed organization, or if you don't have good lines of communication to all areas of the business. So a key figure in this is going to be your CIO. And if you don't have a CIO, again, that could be a trusted partner that you work with for your technology planning. But they need to be very focused on communication and collaboration. What this means is that they are talking to people in different areas of the business, ensuring that they understand what the IT strategy is, make sure that they're bought in and engaged, and that they are able to contribute, right, and help with the success of this IT plan. So I would say that's going to be the biggest number one challenge. I mean, there's always the common challenges of budget, resources, etc. But again, if you're planning with those in mind, your strategy should be supported by those items, and your hardest thing is really just going to be making sure that you are communicating to leadership, communicating to people in all areas of your business, and that the plan is supported and you got engagement across the enterprise. All right. So we're gonna move on to the next thing, and I'm surprised here. This is moving a lot faster than I thought it would. So we may finish a little early. I don't think people are typically upset by that. But I want to get right here to your key takeaways in IT strategy and planning. So there's some things that I want you to remember as you move forward and as you look at integrating your own and aligning your own IT strategy with your business plan. And keep in mind that your IT strategy has to help drive value, right? It needs to be integrated with your business objectives, and it needs to have goals that are the goals of the company, right? It can't be IT for IT's sake, and you can't operate in a void anymore. If you're looking to have a more successful enterprise, you need to make sure that you have alignment between your IT strategy and business planning. We talked about it here, CEOs and executive level buy-in. It's not like you can't succeed if they're not supporting and engaging on this, but it's much more likely that you're going to be successful if you have that leadership endorsing what you're doing and promoting it. This can be a change in focus for CEOs. Can't speak. CEOs. It hasn't always historically been at the core of what they do, but it's harder and harder for them to distance themselves from it. You can't leave it just to your executive team or your CIO to manage. You have to be engaged and you have to be involved. And then we talked about the role of the CIO or a trusted advisor, a technology advisor that you work with to develop this IT strategy. Not every business is going to have a CIO. You might be working with a key partner, right? We mentioned that security example. We had a company in the aerospace industry that needed to meet that compliance requirement, and we worked with them, helped focus their resources on security, and again, get major improvements at a reasonable investment. So you do need to partner with that person. They're very key to the development of their strategy, and it's something I want you to make sure you're keeping in mind as you go forward. Then we talked about this as well. Small changes can actually create big improvements. So if you think strategically and understand that incremental improvements can add up to sustain change over time, you're going to be better off. You're going to get more out of your planning. So I was reading an article about a state institution. I forget which state it is. I think it might have been Colorado, and they didn't have unlimited resources, but they had some big problems. They were able to do smaller investments in key areas and greatly improve their security footprint as well. It's not it's not always easy to determine what those are, but again, if you're engaged with a good trusted advisor, if you're taking the time to analyze this and make sure that you're considering that bang for the buck, small changes can really help. And then again, a well-defined strategy aligned to your business drivers is going to reduce your risk. So that's kind of the key focus. If you engage, if your IT strategy is in alignment with your business strategy, you're going to have less risk, you're going to have better outcomes, and you're actually going to take IT from a cost center to driving value for your company. And with that, I want to say thank you for your time. Again, I realize that we're ending a little bit early here. It does give extra time for questions if there's additional questions. And I have my contact information here. So if you have any questions that you want answered outside of this, feel free to reach out. Very happy to have had the chance to speak to you about developing a sound IT strategy and the steps to get there. And just thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we did have a couple questions sneak in at the end here, so I'll go ahead and start with the first one. So you had talked about common risk. Which risk is most important to consider?
Yeah, so I highlighted it here a little bit. I do think that the largest concern and an area that you can be very effective in addressing is your security risks. So as we look at information security, as we look at threats that are out there in the threat landscape, I think that there are small changes and small investments there that can actually create a ton of value. So I was looking here at my notes. So a couple of statistics just to put that in perspective and why I think it's an important risk is 92% of all malware is delivered via email. A simple, quick fix to that can making sure that you have the right security tools in place. Not just spam filtering, but maybe certain sandbox environments that will open attachments, check them out, vet them, make sure that it's not a risk for your people to look at. There's small investments that can be made to create a great deal of security, in those situations. Another thing, it takes organizations an average of 191 days to identify a data breach, and a lot of companies out there are worried about having the media or somebody else find a data breach before they do. This can be damaging to your brand. It can hurt business in the long and short term, but 191 days to identify that. So again, there's reasonable tools that you can invest in to help with intrusion detection and prevention. It's additional cyber threats. The United States, for example, ranks the highest globally for ransomware attacks. Ransomware is a huge problem. We mentioned City of Baltimore getting hit by it, but there's reasonable investments that can be made. If you focus on ensuring that you have good quality backups that are not just happening regularly, but are confirmed to be restorable, that's your protection from ransomware. So having a good plan in place there doesn't involve thousands of dollars to invest in and can have a huge payoff. And then, since a lot of this was talking about, executive leadership and focus at a CEO, CIO, CFO, and CEO level, keep in mind, spear phishing emails. So we've heard of phishing emails. They send you an email, it looks plausible, they want you to click on something. Spear phishing is targeted at high value targets. So that's going to be your C-level executives. And they're getting better at it. They're writing really clever emails. They're not necessarily having the same broken English that they might have had in them in the past. And they're the most widely used attack vector for getting into your business. So again, simple things to protect their two-factor, multi-factor authentication. You don't need to invest in a huge security apparatus just to be more secure. Long answer to that question, but there it is.
Perfect. Another question is, we have multiple IT vendors and no CIO. I'm not sure we can actually develop an IT strategy. What would your thoughts be on this?
Yeah, that's part of why I didn't just focus on talking about the CIO and their role in relationship to the CEO. If you have multiple technology partners, you can consider consolidating to a single technology partner. There's partners out there like Columbus that can provide support in a variety of areas. So, a lot of this was focused on your underlying infrastructure. Obviously, supporting your line of business applications is important. Focuses on data management, big data, data analytics. Companies like Columbus, where we have the ability to support across the range of your business apparatus, that can be an advantage to you. So if you have multiple vendors, you can consolidate to a vendor. And again, making sure you have the right partner with that you can trust, that has the experience to look at your entire enterprise and help you plan with that in mind. Again, connecting with that partner is a solution. If you don't have a CIO, don't have the resources to hire one, or the ability to put a full-time person in that position.
Okay, and it looks like the last question is something that I can actually answer. It's, will this presentation be sent out? And yes, we will be sharing a recording of the webinar in the next day or so. We'll be sending an email out to everyone, so that way you have access to this and can review all the information that you learned today at any time.
Great. Thank you again, and thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, for this great presentation. And yes, like Kevin mentioned, if there are any additional questions that you think about after the webinar, then feel free to reach out to either Kevin or myself. You will be seeing a follow-up email with a link to the recording. And yeah, thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.